Broadcasting from Edinburgh, Scotland, you're listening to World in Focus on Radio Sputnik.
With Jack Foster and Carolyn Scott. Thank you, Jay. Coming up on today's programme, the Scottish Government have today published their consultation on a potential second referendum on Scotland's independence in response to the UK's vote to leave the European Union. As abortion rights spark protests across Europe, a new poll has shown that 72% of people in Northern Ireland would favour a change in laws to allow for abortions in cases of rape and incest. As you may have noticed, Jack Foster is not with me in the studio today, but he will be bringing us a report on the arrest of Eduardo Cunha, a central figure in the impeachment of former Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff, who is now facing corruption charges. Computer giant Hewlett-Packard are to become the latest target of the Palestinian boycott, divestment and sanctions campaign. Activists claim the company is complicit in human rights violations in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. And how a court case in Edinburgh was brought to a standstill by a highly unexpected visitor. All that and more over the next half hour on this Thursday edition of World in Focus.
The manifesto that the SNP was elected on last month said this: the Scottish Parliament should have the right to hold another referendum if there is a significant and material change in the circumstances that prevailed in 2014, such as Scotland being taken out of the EU against our will. Scotland does now face that prospect. It is a significant and material change in circumstances, and it is therefore a statement of the obvious that the option of a second referendum must be on the table, and it is on the table.
Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon speaking there on the 24th of June 2016 in response to Britain's vote to leave the European Union, which saw 62% of Scots vote to remain. This morning, the Scottish Government took what appears to be the first step towards holding a second referendum on independence from the United Kingdom, with the publication of a consultation on how a second referendum, commonly referred to as IndyRef 2, would be run. Many of those who campaigned for a no vote have expressed concern over a second referendum. Leader of the Scottish Labour Party, Kezia Dugdale, took to Twitter today to say, quote, "Talking up IndyRef 2 is irresponsible economic vandalism. Our country is divided enough. Don't divide us again, First Minister." At the moment, the consultation is mainly logistical. It covers aspects such as the running of campaigns and eligibility to vote, suggesting that a second referendum would be run in an almost identical manner to the 2014 referendum. Joining us on the line is Scottish National Party MP Dr Paul Monaghan. Thanks for joining us today. Given that we could be looking at a second referendum within the next 2 years, do you think that enough critical analysis has been done on why the Yes campaign lost in the 2014 referendum?
Well, I think, as you say, there's a very good chance that there might well be another referendum on independence for Scotland within the next couple of years. I think that might well happen if the UK government chooses not to listen to the people of Scotland. Your second point about the analysis of the result in 2014, I think is a valid one. My particular view is that there has been a great deal of analysis of the results in 2014, and it's interesting that on an almost daily basis, new information about influences exerted over various groups at that particular point in our history emerge and cast a shadow over the result.
And if we do see another referendum, it will most likely not really be identical to the 2014 referendum. The consultation today says that technically it will be the same legal basis on which it's run, the same group of people eligible to vote, but the actual campaign itself will probably be very different because of the EU vote. Is there going to be as cohesive a Yes campaign, an all-party Yes campaign, do you think, in a second referendum?
Yes, I think it will be a very different campaign indeed to the one that was run in 2014. Some of the questions clearly are similar, but the predominant question, I think, is quite a different one. A main feature of the debate taking place now in relation to Scotland's independence is to what extent do people wish their future to be based on being part of the European Union with access to the single market, with our EU citizenship remaining intact, and of course with the free movement of people and the free movement of knowledge still representing major opportunities for the Scottish people. And I think that these questions and these issues really force the people of Scotland to take a different view on the debate about independence, and I think that will influence the outcome quite significantly.
Of course, the 2014 campaign was done with the blessing, if you like, of Westminster, who themselves passed a bill allowing the referendum. Is there any concern that Westminster may reject the second referendum and Scotland could end up in the same situation as Catalonia, for example?
I think technically the UK government does have the right to dictate to Scotland whether or not we have another independence referendum. However, I think in practical and political terms, it's impossible largely for the UK government to refuse to grant the people of Scotland a referendum, not least because it was explicit in the manifesto of the Scottish National Party for the Holyrood elections that took place earlier this year. So I think for all of those reasons, I think the people of Scotland, if they choose to have another referendum, will have another referendum. And I really don't think that there's anything realistically that the UK government can do about that.
Mm-hmm. And just finally, is there anybody within the government, within the SNP, working on alternative solutions for Scotland rather than a referendum, or in the situation that a referendum returns another no vote?
Well, the short answer to that is yes. Nicola Sturgeon is working on that outcome. Every member of the Scottish Government is working on that outcome. All of the MSPs are working on different outcomes, and I can tell you that all of the MPs here at Westminster from the Scottish National Party are working very hard to reach a solution that will allow the people of Scotland to retain their access to, as I've said already, the European Union, the single market, free movement of people, protect our EU citizenship, all of these things. A referendum on independence is not the starting point for the Scottish National Party, but it is one of the options that we are seriously looking at to protect the interests and the economy of Scotland.
Well, Dr. Monaghan, thank you very much for speaking to us today.
Thank you indeed.